How do you get to 1 million Spotify streams in 2024 as a brand new artist? This is a question that I've been thinking about a lot lately, and I'm a little bit wary of coming off as hypey with the number 1 million in a video title, but I also think it'll be helpful just to think through the process for you and for me. So with that said, this is my sketch of what you would need to do to make that happen this year. So let's get into it. Okay, so first of all, I've been thinking about this a lot lately because this week actually I'm launching a membership called Million Plus Spotify Streams, that the goal of the membership is to get artists to 1 million Spotify streams. Not necessarily in a 12-month time frame, but also like 1 million streams is the proposed goal of the membership. So I've been thinking a lot about how to do it. And by the way, if you're interested in signing up for that, it has all my best material. I'm also doing one-on-one calls with people on a monthly basis, even if you want it. I think it's going to be a really helpful path for a lot of artists to get to 1 million streams and hopefully beyond. And you can find the link in the description below. So long story short, I've been thinking a lot about how to get to 1 million streams on Spotify. And the way that I've categorized things mentally is that there are basically 5 ways that you can promote music to get streams on Spotify. And so I just want to give those to you up front so you have kind of the toolbox that we are working from. So the first and probably the most controversial tactic is Spotify playlisting. And I'm talking about specifically third-party or independent curator playlisting, where you are pitching people who have made playlists on Spotify where somehow those playlists got a bunch of followers and you're exposing your music to their audience. Pros and cons with this approach, I've talked about it at length in other videos, but it is definitely a means you can use to get Spotify listeners and streams. The second method you can use to grow on Spotify is off-platform advertising. The most common example is meta ads for Spotify promotion. So you're running ads on Facebook or Instagram and sending those people over to Spotify. You can also do this on other platforms like TikTok or YouTube, but the basic idea is that you're paying to get in front of people to then send those people on another platform over to Spotify. The third method you can use to grow on Spotify is on-platform advertising. And so by this, I just mean any of Spotify's tools that they've put together that allow you to get your music in front of people on the platform. This includes Discovery Mode, Showcase, Marquee, technically Spotify's Ad Studio, and their editorial playlist pitching option as well. The fourth way you can grow on Spotify is through paid collaborations. So reaching out to other artists on Spotify and paying them some amount of money to be a featured artist on your track so that you essentially boost your algorithmic reach on Spotify. And then the fifth, and by far the most open-ended method of Spotify promotion, is what I'm calling organic promotion. And this is any marketing activity that you are doing where you're not paying directly to get Spotify traction. So the most obvious example of this is probably social media marketing. If you're growing a TikTok or an Instagram or whatever, and then some of that audience is finding their way over to Spotify, or you are doing organic marketing to pull them over to Spotify, that I would term organic marketing. If you are playing live shows and some of those people at the shows are coming then listening to you on Spotify, that would fall under organic marketing for me. If you land a sync placement and the goal with the sync placement was not specifically to get Spotify traction, but it does translate to some Spotify traction, that would fall under organic marketing for me. So basically, it's any marketing activity, any way you're getting in front of an audience where the point of that activity was not to grow on Spotify, but it does have the residual effect that you do grow on Spotify. Fair or not, this is the way that most artists think of as legit, where like you didn't even try to grow, but you got some organic traction. But whether or not that is the only legit way or not, it definitely can be an extremely powerful way to grow on Spotify. But it's also a little bit harder to control because you don't have the direct lever. So that's the playbook, if you will, of all the different ways that you can grow on Spotify. And before I get into my recipe for what I would recommend you do to reach 1 million streams, I want to just make one more thing clear. I've been reading Derek Thompson's Hitmakers book recently, and one of the things he says early on in that book that I really like is that there's no formula for making a hit because all the factors are constantly changing. So if there was one formula, you could just do it again and again, and every song that every label or every artist made could potentially be a hit if they just followed the formula. But the thing is that the variables are changing all the time. The variables are different for different artists at different points in time. And so you really have to know some underlying principles, but there isn't like a recipe that you can just follow every time to guarantee that something will blow up. I think that's important to keep in mind, and I also think it's one reason why something like a community, hint, hint, the community that I'm launching, can be helpful as you are working on this stuff because you get feedback and you get objective perspectives on what will work specifically in your context. But all of this is to say that the plan that I'm laying out probably isn't going to be the best plan for you, but it is a path to 1 million streams. Okay, so as we go on this path to 1 million streams, let's set some parameters so we know what we have to work with. So for the purposes of this roadmap, I'm going to assume that we have a budget of $300 per month, so $3,600 over the course of the year, and that we have 10 well-made, catchy, commercially viable songs, like not necessarily in a mainstream genre, but you get the point. It's good music, 10 songs. So with that said, we're starting from scratch. Here is the very first thing I would do. I would pick one social media channel and I would commit to posting every single day in the format that has historically proven to get the most traction on that channel. I mean, that might sound complicated, but basically what I'm just saying is pick TikTok or Instagram and post Reels or post TikTok videos. Somebody who's done this really well recently, I would recommend looking up, is an artist called Nick D. He is a big proponent of growing through content, organic content, and he does it really well. So you can definitely do this, and this can be like your whole strategy. But with that said, while organic content alone can be all you need to get to 1 million streams, you kind of have to rely on things taking off or going viral or figuring things out rather quickly if you want to make that happen in 1 year. So if you're starting from scratch, let's just imagine that things go relatively well and you're able to get to 2,000 followers on the platform of your choice. Let's say that's TikTok. Now, hypothetically, let's also say that 1,000 of those followers actually go over and listen to your music on Spotify. And then further, let's say that you have an average streaming rate of 5 streams per listener over the course of a year, which is pretty average based on my roster of artists. And so you had 1,000 listeners who streamed your songs 5 times over the course of a year. That comes out to 5,000 streams. So that is our starting place. So next, I'm going to say that my first 4 songs are going to be collaborations where I'm going to pay an artist $300 to be on a track with me. And just for the purposes of this experiment, I'm going after artists who have 50,000 to 100,000 streams per year on their singles. So they're not like huge chart-topping artists, but they're people who have like some audience established already that it would benefit us to be involved with their audience. And again, just for the purposes of our hypothetical math, let's say that I'm paying those 4 artists $300 each, so that's $1,200 of our budget gone. And let's say that each of the songs that we collaborate with those artists gets 75,000 streams over the course of the year. And so with that math, we've just gotten our first 300,000 Spotify streams over the course of the year, thanks to paid collaborations. But I don't want to only release collaborations because I am vain. And I want my music to stand out on its own in addition to getting in front of other artists' audiences. So the remaining 6 songs are all going to be singles with just the artist, me. So for each of those songs, I'm going to focus on running meta ads for them. I'm going to spend $300 a month on meta ads, and I'm going to assume, based on some numbers that I've run, that I can get a cost per click that is about average, and I can get a number of streams per listener that is also about average. And given those 2 variables, I'm going to say that I will come to 5,000 streams per month with that level of ad spend. Now, if we extrapolate the ad spend and the streams per month out over the course of the year, we get to, I had to look at my numbers real quick because I don't have this all in my head. Okay, 40,000 Spotify streams. But the good news is that there are 2 unpaid things that we can do to get some additional traction. So first of all, starting in month 4, I'm going to assume that we meet the qualifications to enter all of our songs into discovery mode. And so I'm going to do that throughout the rest of the year. And again, based on some numbers that I've seen from my roster of clients, I'm going to assume that each month by entering our songs into discovery mode, we can get between 3,000 and 5,000 additional streams. And just for the sake of averages, we will round out to 4,000 additional streams per month. So 4,000 times 8 months is 32,000. But more good news, I'm going to assume that we get 1 editorial placement out of the 10 songs that we're pitching. And based on the data that I'm seeing for indie artists on these editorial placements, I'm going to assume we get on something like Fresh Finds Pop and we get 10,000 streams from that playlist over the course of the year. All right, one last hypothetical assumption. I'm going to assume that the data we built in this year has been good and that because of that, we're getting some algorithmic love from Spotify. So let's assume that we can get about 1/3 of our streams from algorithmic sources and add 124,000 streams to our total so far. And that brings us up to a nice round number of 500,000 streams. So half of our goal. And it was at this point in making this video that I literally crumpled up my plan and realized that the math did not quite work. See if I can get this in the trash can without looking. Nailed it. So here's the honest truth. The map that I just laid out is fairly realistic, assuming average results and assuming a budget of $3,600. So if you want to get to 1 million streams, you're going to either have to assume better than average results, or you're going to have to raise the budget. So as an example of better than average results, let's say that instead of only getting to 2,000 social media followers and having half of them listen to the music over the course of the year, you're able somehow to get to 100,000 social media followers and have still half of them listen to the music. That's going to come out to about 250,000 streams, which takes us closer to 750,000 streams in total. And now let's assume that because of your growing popularity, you have an easier time getting editorial placements. And so instead of just getting one, you get on 20, like multiple ads for most of your singles. And so 20 times 10,000 is going to take us to 200,000. And that's going to take us all the way very close to 1 million streams. And so that's how you could get to 1 million streams if you had better than average results. On the other side, if you had more than $3,600 and you were willing to spend, say, $10,000, you could also get close to 1 million streams. And the way that I would do this is by spending more on 3 tactics. So first, instead of only doing 4 songs, collaborations with other artists, I would try to solicit 2 other artists for collaborations as well. So a total of 6 collaborations, hopefully accumulating 75,000 streams each. And again, I am vain, so I don't want all of my songs to be collaborations with other artists. So I would also double my ad spend. And so instead of spending $300 a month on ads, I would spend $600 a month on ads. We could expect to essentially double the number of streams there too, and I'm going to be generous and assume that we could get an extra 10,000 streams just on the back of compounding results. And so the final thing that I would do is pay a playlisting company like Indie Music Academy, Moonstrive, Ugrow for a guaranteed streams package. And if we're going with Ugrow, for example, you can spend about $2,000, $2,200 and get about 150,000 streams. And so with all of those numbers then considered, if we then assume that a third of our streams would still be coming from algorithmic sources, in other words, increasing our spend and increasing our stream count also increases our algorithmic reach, then we get right up to around 1 million streams on Spotify, with a budget of $10,000 releasing 10 songs over the course of a year. Long story short, like I said at the beginning of this video, this is a hard process. You either have to have a lot of budget, you have to have a lot of time, or you have to just have really good music and go viral in ways that are not necessarily predictable. Again, there is not a formula, one simple formula for making this work. It's a puzzle piece you're putting together for yourself, but I also think that any artist can get to 1 million streams with effort and with time. I'll leave you with one more thought. One of my good friends is a full-time artist, and it took him about 7 years from the time he first released his music to the time he got 1 million streams on Spotify. Now, he wasn't running meta ads or anything like that. He was just slowly building the fan base. It took him 7 years to get there, but it took him about 1 or 2 years to get his next 1 million streams, and now he's getting millions of streams each year. So don't give up if you put out your first single and it doesn't get to 1 million streams. Don't even give up if you go through 2024 and don't get to 1 million streams, or if you spend and it feels like a waste of money, or if you work on social media and you don't see the results. The point of making music is not to get streams, obviously. Streams are just a nice way to know that people are engaged, and I do think that if you just commit to making music consistently and the music is good, you can get there. Hopefully this video was helpful. Hopefully it wasn't too discouraging. If you want help, again, I'm launching my community this week. It's called the 1 Million Plus Streams Membership, and I think it's going to be the most effective way that I can help people get to their streaming goals. So consider joining that at the link below, and as always, wishing you good luck as you make the music this year and for the rest of your life. You got this.